Now I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking. What? A movie review? On this channel? You know, what is this lunacy? But, yes. If you didn't know this, this channel used to be about movie reviews. And then I got lazy and just started uploading a lot of bullshit. Now here we are. There's a movie that everybody's talking about for a very good reason. Hereditary. If you know anything about this channel, if you know anything about my preferences, you would know that I love horror movies. It's the first genre that I fell in love with. It's kind of the reason why I fell in love with movies in general. And everybody's been saying that Hereditary is the best horror movie of the decade. Oh my god, it's like one of the best horror movies of all time. It's gonna go down in history. And whenever anybody talks about, you know, a hyped up horror movie, I kind of get skeptical. But then I watched it, and this is really good. It's really, really good. It's up there with The Wailing, Get Out, The Witch, The Babadook. This is up there. Possibly the best. You know, it's flawed, obviously. It's not for everyone, but fuck it. It kind of shook me up. To me, this is like, you know, even though I've referenced the Babadook, Get Out, The Witch, and The Wailing right now, none of those movies really shook me up. I admire the things that they're trying to say. I admire the symbolisms. I admire the technical elements of those films. But those movies didn't shake me up to the core. This is what I call soul horror. Like The Shining is kind of soul horror. It's not necessarily a film that you have nightmares about. It's just kind of a movie that sort of gets you, like, right into your heart, right into your soul, and it just sort of shakes you up, and you're never a different person after that. The Innocents is kind of that movie also. The Thing, to a certain extent, is also that movie. And Hereditary is really a film that's trying to get to you, and it succeeds, and it's not manipulative, and it's sort of amazing. And I only learned about this film about a week ago, and I'm so glad that I did. Now, with this review, I'm going to make some really obvious comparisons, because if you know anything about horror movies, and if you watch this movie, you would know that this film takes a lot from Rosemary's Baby. There are way too many similarities here. I'm not saying that it just rips off the movie, you know, but I'm just saying it takes a lot of beats. You know, here's a movie where a woman who's getting there's a woman who's getting hysterical about a very important experience in her life. In Rosemary's Baby, Rosemary's becoming a mother. She's gonna birth a child. In this movie, Annie, the main character played by Toni Collette, loses her mother. By the way, this review is going to be filled with spoilers, so if you haven't watched the movie, do not watch this review, please. So, here on out, spoilers. Stop watching this review if you haven't seen the movie. You know, she loses her mother. She loses her daughter. She feels like she's losing herself. So, you know, this is also kind of a very important experience for her. And with both movies, there's a sense, at least a presence of a threat. And we're not sure, as an audience member, we're not sure if this threat is real or if it's just all in their heads. And there's also a secret group that's behind it all. It turns out there's always a secret group that's behind it all. And there's some satanic shit going on. And with both movies, the great fear that drives both films, plot-wise, is that there is a group of people out there who have no empathy for you whatsoever. You're just a tool for them to get on with their own biddings. That is probably the most terrifying thing that I could think of in any way, shape, or form. You know, and that there's a force that's willing to exploit the vulnerable. You know, that's probably the most inhuman thing that I could think of. But with Rosemary's Baby, it's more about the fear of motherhood and the fear of losing the child to that outside force that I'm talking about. With Hereditary, it's the fear and vulnerability that comes with loss and losing oneself to that loss, and possibly losing oneself to the thing that that person is scared of the most. And I'll get to that a bit more later, but I'm just saying that Hereditary might be the most perfect companion piece for Rosemary's Baby. To a certain extent, you can watch Rosemary's Baby and then watch Hereditary, and it might make complete sense. To a certain extent, Mia Farrow kind of looks like Toni Collette, so it all makes sense to me. And you know, for these themes to be effective, the mourning in the film should be portrayed realistically, and really, this film really goes all in. Even when you watch movies like Ordinary People, or to a certain extent, Terms of Endearment, those movies take moments of mourning. The whole movie's not about mourning. Somebody dies and they're sad and they think about it, and somebody cries, and it's kind of dramatic, like overly dramatic, maybe overly sentimental. They always play some really kitschy music over it. With this film, it kind of portrays every step of the progression of mourning. You know, at first, Toni Collette's character is in denial of her mother's death, and then she feels guilt, and there's a moment of acceptance at this meeting that she goes to, and then there's anger, and there's the relapse because another experience happens to her, and it's genuinely uncomfortable, and the director is clearly trying to do that by using these amazing sequences. There's a scene where, like, everybody who's seen the movie knows, the big death scene is really when Charlie, the little sister, dies. And what's so amazing about that scene is that most directors, most amateurish directors would think, maybe we should show the body right after the accident. But no, the film waits. The film waits because the brother, Peter, does not see the body. So we're kind of seeing it from his perspective as well. And then maybe like 2 minutes later, then we see the head with flies and ants all over it. And that delayed reaction makes the whole sense of mourning more powerful. And because it's like a day later, finally the bugs are getting to the head, that also makes sense. So the film knows what it's doing when it comes to timing, when it comes to waiting for that reaction or that realization to really hit the audience and the characters. And it just gets genuinely uncomfortable. And when there's a moment that you think is kind of overly dramatic, it goes further and it just becomes nasty and uncomfortable. And really the best scene in the movie that represents all of that is this dinner scene where Peter, the father, and Toni Collette's character Annie is just sitting there, and it's really uncomfortable, and right away you get what it's trying to do. And then they start talking. And here's the thing. Most films would stop that scene right after Annie's outburst. But what this film does is that it keeps going on, even though you want it to stop. And then Peter, the son, retorts back to Annie's little outburst. And then Annie walks upstairs, and it keeps going on to a point where you're just like, I don't want to be in this theater anymore. And it's so effective. It knows that these dramatic moments in real life don't end just like that. It doesn't end when you want it to end. It keeps going on. And this film really tries to portray that authentically time-wise. And of course the film is about mourning, but it could also be about a person trying not to become their past or their ancestors or whatever. Because when you go through Annie's history, you learn that her brother committed suicide. I know the father died some way or another, I can't remember, and the mother's kind of mentally ill as well, and you can tell that she's trying to get away from that. And this whole experience of losing her mother, and losing her daughter, and kind of experiencing these supernatural things around her, with all of this, she's clearly not being able to escape from that, and that adds kind of this new sense of paranoia to it. I don't know, this movie, it really got to me. And of course, all of this would mean nothing if the acting was not good. And of course, possibly you've heard this right now, but Toni Collette kind of gives the performance of her career. And by the way, I do want to talk about the other performance here. What, Millie Shapiro, is that the name of the actress who plays Charlie? She's really good. She's really kind of realistically awkward. Like, you've seen kids like her at your school, wherever you go. They're awkward. They're just kind of, they kind of always look down, or maybe they're focusing on that one thing that they have. At times, I'm that person, so I should know. And the guy who plays Peter, the son, I know he's been in like some movies, and I haven't seen any of them. I know that he was in Paper Town, that movie that he was in with Cara Delevingne. I haven't seen the movie, so this is kind of the first time that I've seen him, that I'm seeing him on the big screen. And here's the thing: at first, he kind of gives this really generic performance where he's all like, "Oh, I'm a teenager. I smoke pot. I play guitar. I don't like my parents. I don't really care about anything." At first, he kind of gives off that vibe. But the second Charlie dies, right after that scene, you can tell that he's all shaken up. And it progressively, he becomes more paranoid. And he becomes more scared. And really, a lot of shit happens to him, if anything. And the film really, the whole arc of the character really requires the actor to give more, and he provides. He gets progressively more impressive as the film goes on. But Toni Collette, yeah, this is going to be the performance that follows her till the day she dies. Maybe also Muriel's Wedding, but nobody cares about that movie anymore. Obviously we know her from The Sixth Sense and Muriel's Wedding and, Little Miss Sunshine and all that, but this is where she basically checks every single point of her range as an actress. She nails the subtle moments, like the dinner scene. Like, the outburst is perfect. That whole speech is amazing. You can tell it's so uncomfortable, the way she's almost screaming out the words. It's great. But then she calms down. Then she sits down. And then Peter retorts. And there's this moment where she kind of gives this little smirk. And she kind of gives a little sigh. And it's this perfect, subtle moment. Almost humorous. Almost screwed up. Almost humorous in a very screwed up way. I don't know. And there's this one scene. And it's really just the expression on her face. There's this one scene where she's trying to burn this book because the demons within that book or whatever. And when it burns, the husband catches on fire. And she's looking at it in complete horror. It's very reminiscent of Shelley Duvall's expressions in The Shining. And then, I think the demon gets into her. And her face just becomes blank. And that sudden change is disturbing. It really is disturbing. And then there's another scene that includes a wire going into her neck, and her eyes are terrifying. There's a lot to say about her performance, and it's really, really amazing. And I'm mostly talking about the performances and the thematic element here, but I do really want to talk about how the film is shot. The shots are composed as if we're looking into a miniature setting. And I think this mostly goes along with the fact that Toni Collette's character designs miniatures of modern day things, or of her own experiences. She models a miniature version of her mother's funeral. She models a miniature version of Charlie's death. And there's a scene where she says, I'm objectively looking at the situation. And I think that goes along with how we're supposed to look at this movie when those dollhouse-ish, miniature-ish shots happen. Seeing the whole setting, because when you look into a dollhouse, you see the whole thing. So when you see the whole setting, it kind of makes the situation more digestible, like the dinner scene. At first, we're there with them at the dinner table. But then, when the whole little conversation ends, the camera becomes further, we see it from the perspective of it maybe being a dollhouse. And it definitely feels more digestible. It feels less disturbing. It feels less uncomfortable. We're able to kind of process the whole situation. And when, Annie leaves the table, and when, Peter and the husband is only there, I think we're able to, like, take in the atmosphere a bit more. And I think, like I said, we're able to objectively look at the situation, not really get caught up with the emotions there. And it really goes along with the theme of the family being controlled by this outside force. Because when you play with a dollhouse, or when you're designing miniatures, you're the one who's kind of controlling the color palette, the settings, the placements. So it goes along with the fact that this demon, this devil, the eighth god of hell or whatever, that he's controlling the whole situation. And it also goes, it makes a certain scene very symbolic. There's this scene where Annie destroys her miniatures out of rage, and that might be symbolic of the film trying to say that this is the turning point. This is where everything is going to become fucked up, because the miniatures are destroyed, which kind of symbolizes that the household is becoming destroyed. I have no idea what I'm talking about right now. There's a lot going on with that. Most importantly, because this is a horror movie, how is it scary? Because it is. And not only is it scary, it's very dark. I've already talked about how uncomfortable it is, which adds to all of it. But really, the main thing about the film is that there's not a single moment of levity here. There's not a single moment where you're able to breathe. No, it's like constant mourning, crying, screaming, being angry, being in fear, and the last 15 minutes is just... it's not letting you go. It's saying, you're not going to sleep tonight, you're not going to walk home in the dark tonight feeling completely fine. You're going to feel something here. You're going to be disturbed. Even if you're not scared, you're going to be disturbed. And really, there are moments where you can kind of see the humor in it. Like, there's this one scene where Peter slightly wakes up and he thinks he sees Charlie's ghost in the corners, kind of like obscured in the shadows. And then Charlie's head falls off and it rolls towards Peter, and it turns out to be a ball. And if you look at it, it's kind of funny in a really screwed up way, but there's not like a direct joke. Like nobody like throws a punchline or like a knock-knock joke here and there. No, it's just constant darkness, emotional cloudiness, and it adds so much to the horror, because there's a lot going on horror-wise. There's a lot of chase scenes. There's a lot of scenes where a lot of things are slightly obscured by shadows. Like my favorite one is the one where it's around at the end, where Peter kind of looks into a doorway, and you see somebody. You're not even sure who it is. It might be the grandmother. It's not the mother. It's not the mother. It might be the grandmother. It might be the demon. But something's smiling and just staring at him, and it just gets to you. And there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. If anything, horror-wise, like the plot-wise, it reminds me a lot of Rosemary's Baby. But horror-wise, it reminds me a lot of The Innocents. The way everything's kind of in the background. The way everything's kind of obscured. Visually, at least. And it's... when you're not sure what you're seeing, but you just know that it wants you to die, that's kind of the scariest thing ever. And I've already talked about how it's scary because... that there are people who have no empathy towards you. Like, that's all going on. So when you combine all of that, it's just this amazing feeling of being completely helpless. The film's amazing. Is it perfect? No. There are some flaws. I'm not sure about the father character. I think he's kind of bland, but I'm not sure if it's because he's supposed to be like the contrasting figure compared to Peter and Annie. But he kind of is boring. Like, he's not a very interesting character on his own. Like, he kind of feels like a tool for that contrasting element there. And the biggest problem with the movie, and this is a problem that I'm willing to ignore, but it is there. The biggest problem with the movie is that it doesn't hint at the alternative throughout the film. And what I'm saying here is that, let's compare it to Rosemary's Baby just for a minute. With Rosemary's Baby, throughout the movie, what are we thinking? It might be all in her head, or there's this cult behind the scenes trying to make that baby into Satan's son. And it's hinted throughout the film. It's not just thrown at you at the end. Unfortunately, with this movie, the whole satanic cult thing, yeah, it's kind of all ham-fisted into the end. Like, maybe the last 25 minutes or so in this 2-hour movie. And sure, there are scenes where you're kind of hinted at some supernatural force happening. You see these illusions, you see the grandmother's ghost, you see ghosts all around, you see this really weird symbol all over the place, and you see words kind of being written on the walls. Like, all of that's going on, but we're never told that there's a satanic cult going on at the end. And of course the satanic cult thing, it does, like, symbolically it makes sense. The satanic cult is kind of the ultimate symbolism for Annie losing herself to her past, to her mother's own mental illness. She's constantly trying to run away from that past, from her family history of mental illness, and in the end, that gets to her in the form of that cult. So symbolically, it makes sense, but like I said, it's kind of ham-fisted at the end. It's just like, oh, there's a satanic cult now, and that's why the whole supernatural stuff was happening. Okay, I guess I'll accept it. But here's the thing. Even though it's sort of ham-fisted at the end, there are two reasons why I'm willing to ignore it. One, at least they hinted very subtly throughout the film, and then it also symbolically works, so there's 3 reasons. And the last reason is simply that the ending is scary as fuck. It's way too intense. There are scenes that I do not want to explain. There's a scene where a headless body floats into a treehouse, and it's... oh god. It's just really good. The last 25... I honestly just want to watch the last 25 minutes again, because it's just so good. So yeah, Hereditary. It's not perfect. It's kind of close to being that. At the very least, it's really, really good. And if you're a horror movie fan, go see it. You've probably already seen it. So yeah. It's good. Bye.